David Tulis, and for the sake of form, so that I will be considered part of the media, maybe it would be good if I could just join briefly here in a kind of histrionic lament for low voter turnout, right? We're supposed to, as members of the media, no, I'm not, but I'm just going to pretend to be for a minute here, as members of the media, to be concerned about the low care among members of the public for the sacrament of voting. In 2016, it was 15.6% turnout here. 2014, it was 26%. So in 94, it was 48. So let's just say it's about 1 in 5 people, as we hear it said, bother to vote. The rest don't. Are the rest being irrational? Are those who don't vote somehow doing something that is self-defeating, self-destructive? Are they somehow wrong in their assessment of their place in society, their place in a political economy, and a commercial government? We don't have honest government. We don't really have Tennessee government. We have the state of Tennessee today. We have a federal government, which is a commercial behemoth, which feeds the insiders and the cartels, which exist and get bigger and stronger as they have more and more sway over the machinery of the state. Even though Donald Trump is at the top, he brought with him a gaggle of hangers-on, though he may have a lot of good ideas about saving the economy and saving small business and pushing back federal grabs on private decision-making in business. He can't stop. He's not a reformer, and he can't stop the bad things from happening that I think are getting worse in some respects. Though he is a remarkable independent man, and he's not your traditional politician. So in that regard, Donald Trump is a remarkable man, and yet he still is a federal president. And from the perspective of David Tulis here in local economy and the free market in Chattanooga and immediately surrounding areas, federal presidents are they're sort of by definition bad medicine. They're bad for us here. There's nothing they can do to make things less bad. And if others had been in that office, they would have certainly made things much worse. If Mrs. Clinton had been elected, we would be already in the collapse. It would have already happened by now. And so President Trump, with his great jawboning and great talk of confidence and his feisty New York mannerisms, is keeping it away seemingly for now. But we are in a kind of a failing country, and national institutions are failing. And I think the fact that they are, and many people can see that, it explains why they don't bother taking part in elections. Elections are a sort of form, right? They are kind of a kind of activity, a kind of public parade activity that give an illusion of participation in many ways. I'm looking here at a great column by Charles U. Smith, one of my favorite writers. I have not read all of his books, but several I have, and I've read them very carefully and marked them up. And I was going to show you one on YouTube here, but I left it in my office. But he explains why the system can't go as it is now, and there's going to have to be a major reset. And he says that talking about the mainstream narrative about fake news and so on, he says the mainstream narrative about that, the fake news narrative is itself not true. He says that the cause of our failing institutions are insider plunder and collusion, and he says aided and abetted by decline in transparency and accountability and the institutionalization of incompetence. In other words, the citizenry's trust in institutions is declining because the failure of the institutions is undeniably the fabric of everyday life in America. Where was the last time you heard the top management of university systems take responsibility for the unprecedented rise in the cost of tuition and textbooks? He says, well, the answer is never. The insiders benefiting from the higher education cartels' relentless exploitation of students and their families, act as if the soaring costs were something like cosmic radiation, a force of nature that no one can do anything about. Now, the same can be said for every other cartel plundering the nation. And he mentions healthcare, and it's called sick care because profits swell from managing chronic illnesses, not from advancing health. Of course, there's the big pharma cartel, which we are mentioning here with vaccination story this weekend regarding Hamilton County schools. There's a military-industrial complex, the banking complex, student loans, the governance, lobbying cartels, the war on drugs, Gulag, the FBI, and so on in every endless profusion of insiders whose self-serving plunder and gross incompetence rarely generate consequences such as someone being fired. When's the last time any official has been fired or indicted? We don't have transparency. So there is this plundering mentality, and we have what's called commercial government. Government is no longer limiting itself to the job of defending the innocent and oppressing the wicked. Right? The government has no longer that very limited authority, which it gets from God. It doesn't exercise a limited authority, but rather a vast authority and control over many innocent activities, which are not anywhere near a crime at all. Right? They've taken control of just about everything. And so people realizing that understand that, well, whomever I vote for, my welfare benefits are not going to go up, right? They're not going to be cut less with this guy or over that guy. You know, my chit, my subsidy is in no more jeopardy with this candidate or that candidate. My special, my government contract is no more going to be jeopardized by this candidate than that candidate. My freebie, my subsidy, my home payment guarantee, the break I get from this, or the tax credit I get from that, they're not in great jeopardy for whomever is elected. So the system somehow operates apart from the election process. And that's why people realize the election process is not that important. So today, here in Hamilton County and Chattanooga and across Tennessee, the majority has already voted. Okay, the majority of people who are registered are not going out. And let's say 4 in 5 people today, maybe you're one of them hearing my voice, my listener today. Maybe you are one who is not going to vote. So you're in the majority. If you're not voting, you are in the majority. And why? Well, there's a discussion about this from the voluntarist camp. These are writers and mostly libertarian writers, and they argue that you should not vote at all on principle. And you might say they're a dissenting electorate. They are part of the electorate, and they're dissenters, and they refuse to vote, and they say that they have a legitimate reason to not vote. And I think from what I've read among them, the main reason is that when you vote, if it's Jonathan Mason or Esther Helton, you're just picking which person you want to go up to Nashville to abuse somebody or steal somebody or put a roadblock in front of somebody else. That's all they go up there for, is to write new laws. And how can the writing of more laws benefit anybody? Now, there are a few laws that are negative in their effect. They restrain some official, but mostly laws empower something new, right? Most laws seem to create some new favor, some new guarantee, some protection, perhaps a different kind of immunity for someone who didn't have it before. And we're going to make adjustments for it. So we're constantly tinkering on the power of the executive state. We're not paring back the power of the executive state. Right? We're not doing that. We're just adjusting it to favor one group slightly more than the other with the passage and the signing of a new law. Voting and elections reduce, the voluntarists say, they reduce political participation. Well, that's right, because in elections, what you're doing is looking at the person who writes the bill or votes on the bill. You are electing leaders, right? We're electing a governor. We're in the primaries for electing a governor. Is it a Democrat or is it a Republican? And I hope we can mention some of the just vicious, some of the vicious advertising and some of the banal the advertising campaigns are the most banal, I guess you could say, but banal, the most banal. They turn the voter into a boob. And I'm thinking of Tim Boyd, perhaps the worst. His appeal to fear. He's got the cops, he's got the state troopers, and you've got this military, this right wing fascist military style of his commercials, which are playing to you. And why do you buy that commercial? Why do you like that commercial? How does it stir you to vote for Tim Boyd? Well, because you're afraid, right? He's going to stamp out illegal immigrant. And the images are all, they appeal to the eye, right? They appeal to the emotion. When you see Boyd talking with the strong state troopers, you think, I'm safe now. I'm safe. I don't have to worry about my personal safety. And that's what he's doing. He's turning, he converts a man like you who thinks into someone. In the 30 seconds you're watching his commercial, you are turned into an infant. You are turned into someone who cannot think for yourself, who cannot reason out the arguments. And that's what commercials are for. You're not supposed to see them. You're just supposed to absorb them, right? Like a shot, like a vaccine. You just absorb it, and it spreads throughout your entire psychic being, right? Your mind and your body, as it were. And you're not supposed to reflect on it. You're not supposed to think about it. It is to be primordial and instinctive. These commercials are intended to get down into the psyche of the individual. These are very expensive to produce, right? They are bits of powerful propaganda. And I'm thinking of Boyd is the worst. He's probably the worst. And Diane Black, hers of her radio ads, of course, on our station. And she is not safe and healthy, right? She's not a safe and healthy person. Being a member of the juror is much more important than being a voter. So I would say if you could choose between one or the other, choose the harder one, the more demanding one on your time. And that would be a juror. 800-8949, 800-8949. David Tulis here, loving our neighbors and urging you to buy local. There's more. and of course you can call me. Yeah, the number, you want that number again? 800-8949. The menu today at Olive Branch Mediterranean Deli, Thursday, paputsakia, chicken shawarma with homemade garlic mayonnaise. That's number 2. And stickless pork souvlaki, that's pork tenderloin. And Nick and Kelly would also love you to have the option of Greek lemon chicken. That's at Olive Branch Mediterranean Deli. Greek lemon chicken. Oh, I'm thinking about it now. And if you don't want to have meat, there is kwaj, which is also a Mediterranean serving there at Olive Branch Mediterranean Deli. So paputsakia is the main offering. The first offering today on the menu here in East Ridge, Olive Branch Mediterranean Deli. Voting reduces political participation to what? To the election of the leader. You don't have the what, you don't have the how and the by what means. You have the who. And somehow we think that if we just select the who, that everything else is out of our hands, right? We think we can't change these other things. We're not sure how to change these other things. We have been, partly by virtue of the fact that we have elections, Chattanoogans have been turned into very soft, malleable, and indifferent people when it comes to the public weal, when it comes to the public wealth, the role of government, the place of the state, the place of city government. Elections limit the intensity of mass political activity. Think about that. If you have no elections, you have the prospect of an explosion, right? People are angry. They're upset. They want things to change. They're not sure how to make those things change. They're dealing with conflicting demands from one branch of government and another, maybe a police department on one side and the rights of the people on the other. Things seem impossible to change. Elections limit the intensity of that political activity. And so what you have, look at what schools tell children. The main thing in schools that you learn about in civics are elections, right? Elections, how elections take place, and then also you have the diagram on how a bill is passed. But there's little attention in the way we're trained and taught, especially in the public school of lower learning. Lawsuits. Where have you ever learned about a lawsuit? Is there ever a class in a public school about lawsuits? Well, no. What about direct action? What about organizing? What about parliamentary procedures? Has there been any kind of class on parliamentary procedures? What about lobbying? What about protests and sit-ins? These are all things that should be taught in school, right? If you have children, you should want them to learn about these things, especially, I would say, especially lawsuits. And you can only learn about lawsuits when you learn about the law. And courses in law in high school, in junior high school, forget it. They just don't exist. No one knows how the system works. No one. And you have to hire a lawyer, right? And he's going to charge you $250 an hour. He may do some things pro bono if he's a church member and has a heart of mercy. He may extend grace to individual problems. But when it comes to an abuse by the state of the people, how does, for example, someone with a license doing something that's damaging to people, like polluting a river, or sending police after people whom are not subject to a particular statute? These are how the modern state, the cartels strip mine the people. We are being strip mined, and I don't want to bang the drum too much about Title 55, but Title 55, which is something I've explored in detail in the past 6 months, but having done a great deal of reading in that topic in this period and also before. It is commercial government, where government is a commercial money-seeking interest that violates the people's rights and effectively is robbing them. It is a kind of state robbery when these things happen. And you say, well, how could that possibly be the case? How can that, David? What are you talking about? The state doesn't do anything outside the law. And look at all the good things the state does. You can get an associate's degree at Chat State on the public dime. I mean, how is that possible? And President and Governor Haslam said it's not raising taxes. So how is that? How is that all done for free? You must have things wrong. I mean, how can there be all these free things, all these good things from our wonderful state of Tennessee and our state government? Why are you so bleak about this? We live in a great state. I mean, and look, I'm David Tulis, and sometimes I make admissions like that. I make concessions like that. Yes, Tennessee is above many other states. Yes, Tennessee has made great progress in the past couple of years in paring back licensing commissions that are impositions and interventions in the free market on like black African-American hair braiding, for example. There's been lawsuits on that. There's a new law that the Beacon Center, and I think in aid with the American Civil Liberties Union to end these state claims of ownership on professions which have no connection to public health, welfare and public health, and yet the state controls professions left and right in Tennessee, one of the worst states in the country for that. And yet we're making progress. So there are good things to say about Tennessee, our state, and yet we need to understand that the system is broken, and so voting has a limit. Voting looks at the who, but it doesn't address the structural problems that we are identifying here at Nougat Radio. David Tulis and Marie Mott. Make sure you tune into Marie's show tomorrow at 11. She has a remarkable insight. Today she talked about, and I don't want to tell you what you missed here, but she talked about redlining and how FDR and the Great Society and the New Deal rather had intensely racist elements in there, and yet we all, Democrats, laud FDR as a savior for the American people. Well, his administration was particularly negative on race relations, as she points out, and I'm learning things from Marie Mott that I'm very glad to hear about. For example, the Black Panthers, in their 10 planks for reform, had 5 of them were constitutional provisions. And what do we hear about the Black Panthers? We hear always wicked things about them. We have these frightening pictures in black and white of black African-American men with shotguns on their arm and rifles nestled in their forearms. Somehow there's something wrong with that, right? And that, again, that's we've been trained to think that that's clearly, these are violent people, and they're about to burn the town down. Well, that's what we've been trained to think if you're a Caucasian. And I know I've been trained that way. And yet it's wrong. So we are here to shed light on things that have been overlooked. And so if you're going to go and vote today, I would say consider the godly argument. And maybe we can talk today as we have a little bit more time. I'm demanding that management give me another hour. 2 hours a day is just not enough. But right now we have more ahead. And we're going to look at what might be a good perspective on elections and voting. Is there a moral, is there a theological defense to make for voting? How can people who are professing Christians make use of voting? What should be their standard? That's a question I have. What should be their standard? David Tulis, I've got some great announcements, great folks for you to hear about now. Our sponsors here on the David Tulis Show, Nougat Radio.
3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nougat Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
Authorities in North Georgia say marijuana was sold right out in the open, labeled as a non